Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. And I want to welcome back our returning guest, Mark Mostert, who is a senior researcher at Able Americans. It's a program of the Center for Public Policy Research. And you can go to their website at center.org, nationalcenter.org. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Wonderful to be with you both again. Thanks so much.
I was just saying during the break before we came on, I said, he has done well not carrying this big accent with him because he started out his undergraduate degree in Africa, South Africa, then Alabama, and then Virginia. So you'd think he'd be a whole mixture of, I don't know what, but you don't.
The whole idea is that you have to understand me. So if I start talking too quickly, wave with gesture and I'll slow down.
Okay. All right. Well, we're a little bit off topic here. Let's get on topic and talk about that the Department of Education is very different from specialized education or, special education for people with physical, mental disabilities. And what is it you want people to know?
Well, there's been a lot of churn, as you would say, given that one of the things that the Trump administration wanted to do was basically shut down the Department of Education. Now, we've only had a Department of Education since 1980. Before that, it was completely a state's responsibility. And the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, does a lot of good stuff, but not as much involvement as you would think, for example, in bettering things for students. They do things like manage student loans, forgiveness programs, enforcing special education law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The only way they really impact is that they do have a national center that collects statistics on education. The big issue is that as with every other government department, the Department of Education is massively overstaffed and bloated. There's no question about that. So when the Trump administration came in, they said, look, we've got to cut this bloat. We simply have to do it. We're out of money. We probably can cut a whole bunch of things without hurting anything. And they did indeed let a ton of people go from the Department of Education. In terms of disability, people are worried that the services for kids with disabilities will be cut. And so kids who need these benefits and these resources, there's about 7.5 million of them, will have that cut. That so far has not happened. The whole Department of Education has to be rearranged. It has to be restructured to make it more efficient. And whatever government department you look at, it's so inefficient, discoordinated, left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, that's what needs to be fixed. In his line item budget, President Trump did not cut anything for kids with disabilities, although he cut a lot of the other things within the Department of Education.
So how do people go about making these changes and transitions that are needed and necessary? Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I think that it has to be a concerted effort, top down from the government. I think you have to get educational experts involved, researchers involved, people who know what this department does impacting on the ground. And when you look at on the ground, currently there's not that much impact on the ground. As I said, the states pretty much take the burden there of actually providing the services and teaching the kids. So it needs to be restructured. I know Linda McMahon has said, the Secretary for Education has said that perhaps one way to tackle this is for all the special education services that are now within the Department of Education to be placed under Health and Human Services. In some ways that makes sense, given that many disabilities that kids have are physiological and physical and psychological and emotional. That would make sense. That's all up for grabs. No decisions have been made as of yet, but that seems to be the option that is the most attractive coming out of the buzz in Washington.
It's interesting, since the beginning of the Department of Education, test scores have gone down every year, but there was a time when we weren't addressing the needs of special education kids, and that has only grown. That population has grown, I think, over 7 million need that, and some people will say, well, is that being overdone? Well, I from what I see, no, that there are a lot of special needs kids. We won't get into that rabbit hole of why is that and where's that coming from, but that's so different from the National Department of Education, yes, where a lot of people's values are being, disrespected, and test scores are going down. This is so separate. It makes sense that it would be put under a different department, like under the Department of Health.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. And by the way, again, the U.S. Federal Department of Education really does not have that much impact in terms of teaching kids in schools. They certainly do in enforcing special ed law. You have disability law that speaks to kids with disabilities, and of course the American with Disabilities Act, which looks at adults with disability. They enforce that, which I think is a great idea. And maybe their role should be more of enforcing the laws for special education on the ground in the States, and leave the actual services and support to the Department of Health and Human Services. What we don't want to see is any services that these kids get, and they really, really deserve them, being cut or being, sunsetted somehow. That's not a good idea. These kids deserve and need the kind of support that the states provide, and a lot of that does come through federal government money.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's why I like, we're going to, in this next segment, we're going to take a look at somebody who's being impacted by some of the situation at the government as it relates to disabled Americans. So when you actually look at the individuals being affected, then it personalizes it. So we're going to take a look at that when we come back.